Hey there, fellow VTuber! Are you looking for a way to automate and customize your model using things like channel points and commands? Well, Streamerbot just got a massive update that supports all sorts of options in VtubeStudio, even more so than Mix It Up. If you have too many hotkeys and not enough fingers, you can let your chat control them using channel points, commands, basically any trigger that you want. We now have access to color tint for quick recolors, and even access to raw requests if you want to make something more complex with custom code. I do have one quick disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about this from the perspective of a beginner Streamerbot user and a fairly new VtubeStudio user. That's just because I know a lot of VTubers might be swapping over from Mix It Up and have no clue what they're getting themselves into learning Streamerbot right now. So if that doesn't apply to you, just use the timestamps. I always have there's so many timestamps down there. Okay. Let's start. For the core of this tutorial, you're obviously going to need Streamerbot. So if you already have Streamerbot, you can just go ahead and skip forward. Just make sure that you're running 0.2.0 minimum, because that is the update that will include all of the VtubeStudio integrations. To get Streamerbot, you'll just download it from the streamer.bot website. Go ahead and click this button here. You can download this to any folder that you want, just make sure you know where it is. Once you've got it saved, you can extract the zip file and it will give you a bunch of stuff, but the only thing that we really care about is the actual application file, which you can just double click and it will go ahead and open Streamerbot up. If it wants to open, give him a moment. He's taking his time. Now, if you've ever used something like Item or Mix It Up, which is seemingly the choice among VTubers, you will definitely find similarities between those and Streamerbot. The UI is pretty rough, but with the recent update, it's a tiny bit more beginner-friendly. Before we start with our VtubeStudio integrations, I'm assuming you'll want to connect Twitch for stuff like channel point rewards and linking up events like subs and follows. To do that, we can go over to our Platforms tab, make sure that you're in the Twitch tab, and go over to accounts. So if you go ahead and click login, it will open up a tab in your browser. If you're logged in on that browser, you can then scroll all the way through all of these ridiculously long things that you're giving it permission to, and then go ahead and tap authorize, and it should link your account in. If you have a bot account, you can go ahead and do the same process, just make sure you're logged in on your bot account on your browser, and you can go ahead and get that verified as well. Now we're ready to go ahead and connect to VtubeStudio. So once you have VtubeStudio open, you're going to double click and that will bring up the menu, and then we can go ahead and click on the cog. That will pull up the main menu, and make sure you're in the cog tab. And we're going to go over and scroll down a little bit until you see this VtubeStudio plugins section, and make sure that you have this button toggled on that says to allow plugins. Now we can head back over to Streamerbot, and we're going to go to the integrations tab here, and then we can find the VtubeStudio tab. And over here we have some options. We can auto connect and auto reconnect in case we lose connection or want it to auto connect every time that we open up Streamerbot and have VtubeStudio open, and then we can go ahead and hit connect. Now when this happens, you will get a pop-up within VtubeStudio that's asking for VtubeStudio plugin like API access, and it should say streamer.bot from Nate1280, and you can go ahead and hit allow. And now we have our Streamerbot connected to our VtubeStudio. Now that we actually have VtubeStudio and Streamerbot connected, we can go ahead and start doing stuff. Now, if you're a Streamerbot veteran, you definitely don't need to watch this part, but if you are new to Streamerbot, let me quickly explain how this menu works. Basically, here we have our actions list, and each action is going to be triggered by something, like a channel point reward, a command, or maybe even just a follow or a subscription. And when that action is triggered by that event, it will go ahead and run a list of sub-actions. If that sounds really confusing to you, I'm going to quickly give you an example, and I'm going to make it triggerable by a command, channel point rewards, as well as follows or subscriptions, just so you can see how it works. First, we're going to right-click and make our action, and I'm going to name mine test, and then I'm going to hit OK. Now we have our action made, and we're going to make our sub-action. So the sub-action is the actual thing that will occur when the action is run. So you can do a lot of things, but for this example, I'm just going to send a message to chat. So I'm going to go to Twitch, chat, send message to channel. I'm going to set it to broadcaster because my bot is not logged in, and I'm going to just make it kitty face. So now we have our action, and when this action is run, it will send a kitty face to chat. But it's not currently being triggered by anything, which means it's never going to happen. So we have to make it triggerable. For Twitch events, these are just within the menu themselves. So you can go ahead and right click, go to Twitch, and you can go to, for example, channel and do a follow. Once you make your test action triggerable by a follow, you can also test it by right clicking and hit test. And as you can see, we get the little kitty face in chat. Now we can also make this triggerable by commands and channel point rewards. So I'm going to show you quickly where those are because the UI is a little bit odd. For commands, those are going to be up here in the commands tab. And to add a command, we can go ahead and right click, hit add, and I'm going to name this command test. And I'm going to make the command for it !test. Hit OK down here, and now we have our test command. So now when we go back up to our actions tab, we can also add in another trigger that will make this happen, and that's going to be in core commands, command triggered. And we can set the command to our test command. Once we have that set up, now we can do another test here and go ahead and hit !test. And we'll get back the kitty face once again. The last trigger that I think you would be inclined to use in this video is going to be via channel point reward. Those are going to be up here in platforms under channel point rewards in the Twitch tab. You can go ahead and right click, hit add, and I'm going to name this test reward. I'm going to make it cost 1 with a cooldown of 0. Now that we have our test reward made, we can go back to our actions tab and add it as a trigger. So right click, we're going to go to Twitch. If I can remember where this is, channel reward, reward redemption, and we can set the redemption to test reward, hit OK. And now this is also available as a trigger for our little message as well. And we can go over and redeem test reward, and it will send the kitty face again. The only thing that I have to add on to this basic introduction to how Streamerbot works is that if you already have all of your channel points made, they will show up here, but they will not show up as owned. If you want to have Streamerbot able to edit and adjust your channel point rewards, you have to make them within Streamerbot itself. It's very possible that you'll have some that you already made that are not like owned by Streamerbot. You'll have to remake those, unfortunately. But yeah, those are the basics. Hopefully that helped you. You'll get used to it as time goes on, and there's plenty of resources online about Streamerbot, especially in the Streamerbot Discord. So if it's all overwhelming, feel free to drop a comment or go ahead and join the Streamerbot Discord, and you will definitely have your questions answered there. So now that you've got a pretty good gauge as to how Streamerbot works, let's go ahead and go through a tour of all of the new VtubeStudio integrations. The first one that I want to show you is going to be running a hotkey. Now before we do that, we do have to make sure that we have a hotkey made. If your model is already ready to go and has all of your hotkeys, go ahead and skip forward. Otherwise, let me show you how to quickly make a hotkey if you've never done it before. To do that, we will double click and go to the cog menu. Once we're in the cog menu, go ahead and go to the clip tab and scroll over. Make sure you're at the top and you will have this section called expression editor. We can click this, go ahead and go to create new expression, and then we can make a new expression, or let me just name this test. And I'm just going to make my bodysuit turned on for this expression. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Now, if you look at the actual model folder at this point in time, you can see that it's actually made an expression file already that has the expression information in it, but it doesn't actually have a hotkey yet, so we have to make a hotkey. You can go ahead and click create new hotkeys for all unused expressions, and it will go ahead and find any expressions that don't have a hotkey yet and go ahead and make one. And so if you hit OK, it will make the hotkey. You can scroll down if you have 8,000 hotkeys like I do, and it'll be at the very bottom. We have this new hotkey that will run this expression when triggered. Now, normally this would be triggered by a key combination, but you actually don't need to press keys in order for this to work. Now that we have a hotkey made, we can go ahead and right click and add a, let's see, I made it my bodysuit, so let's do turn on bodysuit. Bodysuit. And for the sub action, we're going to right click and go to integrations, VtubeStudio, and hit trigger hotkey. Now you can select which model. It does specify which model is currently loaded, so in my case I'm going to go ahead and select my currently loaded model, and then you can select any expression that you want, and in this case I think it was called test expression, so I'm going to go ahead and select that one. Now we have our action ready with the VtubeStudio sub action ready to go, and we can go ahead and right click and add a trigger, and I'm going to make this, which let's say just channel, or let's do subscription. Somebody subscribes any of these tier levels, it'll go ahead and trigger that expression. So if I right click and I hit test, it'll put on my bodysuit. You actually don't necessarily need a hotkey either. So for example, if I went ahead and deleted this hotkey, there's no hotkey now, but the expression file that I showed you earlier is still present in my model folder. So to run it based off of expression and not off of hotkey, you can go to right click, integrations, VtubeStudio, and we can go to set expression state. And it will pull up the entire list of those exp3.json files. So anything that you have in your model folder will show up here regardless of whether or not it's an actual hotkey. And we can set this to enabled or disabled. If you set it to toggle, if it's on, it'll turn off, and if it's off, it'll turn on. And so now if I do a test, it'll still remove the bodysuit, but there's not actually a hotkey for it. So if you don't want all this clutter for hotkeys here, you don't have to do it. You can just make it set up based off of expressions in your expression folder. So that's really neat. It's also worth noting that you can run hotkeys based off of name instead of based off of a model specific hotkeys. And so that's really good for if you have multiple models that have the same hotkeys. For example, something like head pats. So let me show you that really quick. So I'm going to add a head pats action, and I'm going to make the sub action a integration, VtubeStudio, and I'm going to set it to trigger hotkey by name. I'm going to make the name the same name as the hotkey listed in VtubeStudio, so that would be head pats. And for the trigger, let's go ahead and make a head pats command. So this model and my other model both have a hotkey called head pats. And so if I go ahead and run this command now, do exclamation head pats, it'll go ahead and run that hotkey. So now I have swapped over to my other model, which also has a hotkey called head pats. And now if I do the command, whoops, it'll still work because the hotkey name is the same, and even though the model isn't the same, it's running it based off of the name instead of the actual model's specific hotkey. So that's a nice feature. Now, next up, we also have something called color tint, and this will basically tint the art mesh on your model whatever color you specify. Now for this, I'm going to turn off my lighting so that you can see it in its full capacity. If you want to learn how to do this cool little backlight effect that I have on, by the way, I have a tutorial on my channel. So I'm going to go ahead and make a tint test. I'm going to go ahead and make a test channel point redeem for this. So I'm going to name this test color, and I'm going to put it in the test group so you don't have to see how many other things I have. So now we have this set up. Right click, go to integrations, VtubeStudio, and then we can go to color tint. And the color tint menu is basically just hex code. You can click the ... here and it'll open up the color menu. If you want a color different than what they already have set up here, you can hit define custom colors and choose basically anything that you want. So I'm just gonna pick an obnoxious blue. Now this is just a hex code. If you wanted this to be lowered opacity, you can go ahead and add the opacity at the end. So that's pretty easy to add. But I'm just going to leave it opaque like this. So you can do this based off of Artmesh number, the exact name, the name contains, tag, or you can also hit this tint all button and it will tint everything. And you can go ahead and hit the test button. So if I test that, obviously I'm blue. Nice. Now, the problem with this is I don't think there's an untest button, which means that if you want to reset this, the best way to do it within the menu itself is to just go ahead and set it to white again and hit test, and that will clear off the color tint. I don't know why it's like that. Now, as you can see, you can also do exact names for your art mesh, which you'll enter in here. If you're your own model maker, you probably know all of your art mesh names, but if you are not your own model maker, or maybe you just don't don't remember what you named them, then you can get them out of VtubeStudio. To do that, you'll open up VtubeStudio, double click, and go to the main menu, and within the little dude with a cog menu, you'll go ahead and go to Customize Model right here. And then you can hit Customize Lighting Scene for Artmeshes, or you can hit the Customize Multiply whatever, as long as it pulls up the Artmesh menu. Also, I'm lagging as fuck right now, sorry about that. Now, once you're in this Artmesh menu, you can pretty much just hover over any piece of your model, and it will go ahead and let you know in the top left what the actual name of that component is. For me, I have a lot of things that are not visible right now, so when I hover over here, you can't see like what any of this is, so I would probably have to use a search function. Like, for example, if I was looking for my arm, I might type in arm, and then I can find all of my arm components here, and these are going to be the names that you would type into Streamerbot. So for example, if I wanted to just do like my bangs, I could set this to say name contains and say bang and add that, and then if I did a test, it will color anything that has just that bang component to it. I'm gonna reset this back to white real fast and do another test to clear it. So you can also do exact names. So for example, if I did breast L, breast R, put it back on blue, I can make my boobies blue. You know, you can do whatever you want. But that's a pretty cool feature. The only annoying thing is that I don't really understand how to reset it. Now, within the integrations menu, there is an option to reset all color tints. So if you really didn't want to have to keep resetting it to white, you could probably make yourself a hotkey that resets all of this stuff. And so then every time that you messed up, you could just press the hotkey and clear it. I don't know what else to do, but that is how you do color tint. It's pretty cool. So I'm gonna make this iris just for the time being, and I'm gonna make this green so we can make my eyes green. Hit OK, and now we can go ahead and add a trigger in, and now if I go over here and I go ahead and do test color, it will make my eyes green. Yay! Now, in addition to that, we also have some basics. I believe these are all available on Mix It Up. So you can load a model, get your current model, and you can also move your model as well. Before we move on to this last section, I just wanted to remind you all that if you like this video, please drop a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll leave links to my shops and social media below if you would like to keep up with me. It really helps my channel and it means a lot to me. But let's go ahead and get into the last sub-action for VtubeStudio, which are going to be raw requests. So a raw request is basically a way to get some delicious, delectable data directly from VtubeStudio. And you can then use that in something like C# code if you want to do something a little bit more complex than just what's available to you via the hotkeys and things like that. So we can go ahead and send a raw request. So as you can see on the VtubeStudio API page, there is a list of all of the information that you can request from the VtubeStudio API. For example, if we go ahead and check out this Getting Current VtubeStudio Statistics, we'll see that this is the request format, and this is the response that we're going to get back. So it's going to have things like uptime, frame rate, etc., etc. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one as an example. So first of all, our message type here, this is going to be the type of request that we're going to put into Streamerbot. So I'm going to go ahead and steal this statistics request, and we're going to set that here as our request. Now down here is where we would put data. If we have a chunk of data that we're going to request from the API, we would put this here. But if you look at the actual format of the request here, there isn't a section that has data. It gives us data back, but we don't actually have to request anything. So we can actually go ahead and leave this as just curly brackets in this case. I'm gonna name this stats. And now if we go ahead and hit test, we'll get back a result. And the result is going to be all of the information. I have VtubeStudio open at 1921 by 1080p. I'm living in the future. But anyway, it'll spit back out this information, which is a carbon copy of what is listed here. So uptime, frame rate, and all that. It's going to give you back this data. The cool thing about this is that if we want, we can also set up this option. We have a grand list of options here with a total of 1. Despite there only being 1 option here, this option is pretty significant. It lets you save these results to arguments. So it will actually take all of this information and store it for you, so you can reference it later in other sub-actions, or if you pass these arguments on to a different action, then you can do some really complicated, cool stuff. So in this example, like I mentioned earlier, there's actually no data to request, but some of these do have data that you'll want to request. For example, if I want to check all of my expression states, I can go down here and the format is going to be right here. The message type is expression state request. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to change this to expression check or something like that, I guess. And for this one, we do actually have some data in here. So I am going to copy this. You only need to copy what's in the curly braces, including the curly braces, and that will go here. So what we can do is we can include a file name and it will actually check for that specific expression and see what its state is. So for me, I know I have test expression made now, right? So I'm going to rename this test, oops, not mtest, test expression xp3.json. And now if we hit test, it'll give us back the state of that test expression. And it's currently not active, obviously, because if we remember, it was my bodysuit and my bodysuit is off, and it is currently false because the bodysuit is inactive. Now, as I said before, you do have the option to save this to arguments. So we can actually save this to a variable and do stuff with it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to set this to a command. So now if I run my command, it will run this. Obviously nothing happened because it's doing this internally. But then if we go to our action queue, we can see that it was run. This raw request was run, and we can inspect the variables after run, and we can see down here we've got all of this information that came out of that raw request. As you can see, it's not labeled like how you'd think it'd be labeled. You'd think active variable might just be named active, but it's not. It's actually got this entire full long name. So if we want to use these variables, for example, I'm just going to copy the name of this variable and we can go here. If we go into chat, send message to channel, I can set this to broadcaster, and I can say bodysuit active, and then I can put %. By the way, if you want to put a variable, you put % in front and behind of it. And so this is the name of that variable that's now been stored. And so now if I run model, it will actually spit out that the bodysuit is false because it's actually referencing that variable that has information stored from that raw request. We also have, with our integrations, we have a list of triggers. So VtubeStudio itself can be used as a trigger as well, which is pretty cool. So you could have an action run anytime that you swap your background, or if your model is doing an animation, you could have something else trigger. And these things are all integratable with any other stuff that Streamerbot can do. So for example, if your model updates, you could have it linked to change OBS scenes or something like that. Overall, I'm super looking forward to the Streamerbot update, and I'm glad that it can be an option for VTubers now without the need for C#. It also conveniently came out after I learned C# for the purpose of doing all of this with code. So that's fun. At least I know C# now. Let me know what feature you're most excited for, or if there's anything else that you would like to learn about in regards to Streamerbot, whether it's related to the VtubeStudio integration, or just about how I use Streamerbot as a VTuber myself. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next one, and take care of yourselves. Bye!